spirits go. Woo, 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 woo. My God is my King. Yes, He is the source of my strength, my everything. Blessed is the King of Israel that cometh in the name of the Lord. My God is my King. Yes, He is the source of my strength, my everything. Ooh, yeah. There's no problem that my Jesus can't handle. He's wise. He can handle it. Yeah. The glory of the one who came from the Father, the only Son. Conquered hell and the grave. Yes, Jesus, you are. You are. Thanks to you, I can be delivered. I can be set free. There's no more chains holding me. Without you, my world would stop. Jesus, you'll forever have my heart. Lift up your head, oh ye gates, and the King of glory shall come in. On the throne, I can't go on. My God is my King. He is the source of my strength, my everything. There's no problem that my Jesus can't handle. He's wise. Because you reign, I'm not worried about my problem. 'Cause I know you're gonna solve them. You're my source, you're my strength, you're my everything, you're my everything. Yes, you're my Jehovah Rapha, my healer and my deliverer. Yeah, yeah. You're my refuge. In the time of trouble, you shall hide me.
And now we take you live to New York City.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Demone, Seraphin, and I'm so excited that you have joined us tonight for Broadway Offstage Right. Hey, I am so excited to announce our guest, our third guest, on our show tonight. He is singing in the revival of the musical company on Broadway, also singing the original cast of Once, and currently he can be seen on Broadway in the musical Bandstand. His name is Brandon Ellis. He's an incredible actor and an amazing writer as well. I've had the privilege of performing in one of their shows, and we'll talk about that soon. But so, ladies and gentlemen, friends, please show your love to none other than Mr. Brandon Ellis. Brandon, how are you?
Hello. Good. How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. You are our third guest, man, and I think this is so incredible. So I just want to jump right in. I want to jump right in with you telling us how this all started. Who is Brandon Ellis?
I grew up in North Carolina, and I grew up as a musician, and then ended up going to college for acting, and moved up to New York after I graduated and started this whole journey, and made my Broadway debut in 2006 or 2007, somewhere in between there, in Company. And and it all becomes a blur after 10 years.
That's good. Listen, you're telling me. So tell me, were you one of the, were you like everybody else who knew they wanted to do this since they were 5?
I would say that I didn't really latch onto this until I was about 18, actually.
Wow.
I was sure sure I was going to go to school for music, and then I fell in love with it around 18.
And what was that thing that pulled you in?
I had kind of a rough year, and I was looking for something different to do, and I was getting kind of burned out on classical music. And I auditioned for this play and in the school. I believe it was Glass Menagerie, and I didn't get it. But I really enjoyed the process of like learning the play and doing the work and creating characters. So I came back and auditioned for the next year's plays, and I did get it. It was a Tennessee Williams play called 27 Wagons Full of Cotton, and that was my first play, and then my first ever musical was Seraphin that we did in high school.
Wow. And who did you play in Seraphin?
We did this, because I was one of the only guys that could sing, we did this kind of weird version of it. So I played the balladeer and the proprietor, and then I also sang all the songs for Shulgosh and Hinckley, and they would kind of act it out, because I was the only one that was the singer.
Wow. Well, you are cool. You are an incredible singer, and
back at you, man.
Oh man, thank you. I've had the privilege of not only being in the show that you developed, but that you were in as well. And I got to tell you, brother, you are an incredible performer and a talented writer as well. So tell us how that came about, the whole writing.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. So I had some bad luck in my career, and nothing was happening. And I kept kind of sitting down with this group of guys and going, and we were all like, we can't seem to get anything going. Nobody's seeing us for anything. So we kind of were like, you know what? Screw it. Let's just write our own thing. Let's put ourselves in it and get it produced. And that's kind of the impetus for it. And so we started writing a vehicle for us to be able to show people what we could do. And
That's incredible. I don't mean to cut you off, but I think one of the things that we always try to show our audiences is that, you know, this life in this industry, in this art, requires us to kind of wear so many hats and do so many things. And to hear you say you wrote this play as a means of getting seen, can you just talk to that reality just for a minute, and then we'll go back to talking about that show?
Yes, absolutely. Like I had my Broadway debut. It went well, and then my agent left the business, which got me shuffled off to someone who didn't really know me as well, and they weren't really doing much for me. And then things just weren't happening. I couldn't get in rooms. People didn't really believe in me, and everything completely stalled. And then I ended up leaving that agency, and I was completely without representation, and I really needed a complete reboot of my career. And nobody was giving me a shot. So I just decided I'm going to write this thing, and I'm going to show people the sides of me that they don't know exist. And then I wrote that show. Well, me and the guys wrote that show for that reason. And because of that show, I got a new agent, and it did jumpstart my career again. I mean,
wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that show, ironically enough, it's really funny. It's called Balls the Musical, a romantic musical comedy. Tell us about listen, I do. Tell us about that show.
Well, that show, it was a fish out of water story about a bunch of guys like myself who are it's probably the only industry in which a 25 to 30-year-old straight white guy is a minority. And so it's an interesting thing it was like our fish out of water story. And most of it was kind of making fun of us, making fun of how like we were regularly like, oh crap, like we do not fit in at all. What are we going to do? And how we kind of found our place or found a way to fit into this industry that didn't really have a place for us. And as weird as that sounds, and then we were able to open it up to be more of a just fish out of water story. I mean, and one of the great things is that, like yourself, I think you told me that nobody had really given you a shot at comedy before.
Yeah.
It was for all of us. It became this like, let's show people that we can do other things than the things that we've done before.
Well, it really was. It really was. And I think I've always said this, and I'll say it again for our listeners. I thank you, because you really were the first real experience that I had in terms of just being balls out funny, with every pun intended. I've done other shows, Full Monty and blah blah blah, but this show really allowed me the opportunity to tap into that funny that I didn't really know existed, and you pulled it out. Brandon was the writer, the dance captain.
You will probably never hear that title beside my name again.
Listen, but that show, then, it opened things up for you. It opened things up, I think, for all of us. But then, after that, how long was it before Broadway came knocking again?
Oddly enough, right, I think it was a few months after that.
Wow.
Wow. The agent that came and saw me signed me out of that show, and he said, I think within maybe 3 or 4 months was when I started auditioning for Once. And that whole now the audition process for Once was long. I think it took probably 6 months of auditions before I actually got it. But then I got it, and then that kind of started things again. And I was also, the second time around, I was able to go to realize some of the mistakes I made the first time and take a little bit more advantage of the position I was in and try to make something out of being on Broadway, which was, as opposed to going, I'm on Broadway now,
Yeah, it's really interesting, Brandon, because the first few shows that we did with our first two guests really talked a lot about transition, and I think transition is just kind of the recurring theme for the life of an artist, be it an actor, dancer, musician, whatever, that we all go through these periods of transition in our lives and trying to figure out what we do in those moments when we find ourselves in a holding pattern where we feel like nobody wants us, or that we just can't get booked. And you, in transition, started writing. Right.
Wow. And it's continued. It's branched into something that I really enjoy doing now, which is great.
So do you have any other writing projects on the horizon right now?
Yeah,
or anything that we can look forward to seeing?
Well, I hope so. Well, I tell you, one of the things I learned from doing balls with you was exactly how hard it is to get something produced. It is hard. It's a miracle anything ever happens, ever.
Yeah. So when there's money and myriad opinions.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you're writing?
Yep, I'm writing a lot of. I've got 2 or 3 pilots that are close to done that I will, hopefully be able to pitch to somebody. And I got a couple musicals I'm working on, and then potentially joining a writer's room for a web series. But I don't know if I'm going to be on it yet or not.
Okay.
So that they're all possibilities, irons in the fire that might yield something.
That's okay, because right now you are back on the boards, my friend.
Back on the Broadway, yeah.
You are back on the Broadway in the musical Bandstand. Yeah. So tell us about that, because that's an interesting story to me, the kind of development of Bandstand. Can you just fill us in and let us in on that process?
Well, the show's special to me for a lot of a lot of reasons. They're the first, so I was an understudy for a long time, and this is the first time somebody gave me the chance to originate a brand new character and create it from the ground up. And so this is my first original starring role in a Broadway show that I created, original Broadway cast. And that's that's something that's been a dream of mine since I decided to do this, 15 years ago. It's very special for me. It kicked a lot of boxes. The first time I've ever been invited to perform on the Tonys. The other shows I was in, but I didn't get to perform. The first time I've ever been able to do the cast album, I got invited to do that, which is great. Lots of boxes. But that stuff aside, the show is about, you're talking about transitions, and it's interesting because this show is very much about that. It's about these group of World War II veterans who are trying to figure out a way to rejoin society after coming back from combat. And they're all dealing with the scars that war left them, and they're all musicians. And they find the redemptive and healing quality of music throughout the show, and they learn how to live with being okay with not being okay. And this society that has seemingly moved on without them, and how they're going to be able to transition into being a part of it.
Wow. Okay. I got a chance to see it at Paper Mill before it came to Broadway.
Okay.
And I thought the music was quite incredible. I thought the story was quite engaging. The characters to be quite interesting. And then again, I think with everything you just spoke to, and I guess just in terms of transition, we find ourselves in the middle of a transition just in terms of our society and in the culture. And I think it's, again, really interesting that you find yourself in that musical in the space and time that we're in today. And so I guess my question to you is, how does Brandon the human being live in and create in all of this that we're dealing with right now?
Boy, it is. I've never felt it more important to be an artist doing what we're doing. This is the avenue where we're supposed to be the ones that call out social injustice and find ways to present it to people in a way that they can process it through art. And it's important. And also, I feel like art is it's a healing medium. It's a cathartic medium. And right now, we need a lot of healing.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon, your heart is certainly huge in that direction, and I can speak to that personally. I had some issues during balls, of which you kind of responded to in a very huge way, that shifted my view of how we kind of deal with each other, our humanity, and you live in that space, and so I appreciate that about you, your openness, your honesty, and your desire to see wrong things righted.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
and figuring out ways I'm sorry. Yeah, figuring out ways to do that right now is so important, and it's always hard. Even when we know what we're supposed to do, it's hard.
So what do you think, in your estimation, and you kind of alluded to it, but I kind of want to give you the space to speak to it further. How do you see what we do? How do we see that being the instrument or the bridge to kind of alleviate or at least bring to light and offer a solution to the extreme crazy that we're dealing with in the culture right now?
Well, It's I only think I might have an idea. I don't know that I have all. I definitely don't have all the ideas or even a ton of them. I just know that it's our job in the arts community to hold a mirror up to society and say, this is what you look like. This is what we look like. And you came here to see us tell a story, and we have a little bit of freedom there in that they understand that your job is to tell a truthful story. So sometimes, even though they may disagree with you, they'll still sit there and listen and watch because they came to see a story told, and they know that sometimes it's not going to be what they want to see or hear. And honestly, those are the people. That's the people that's most important for us to reach, to get our story, whatever that may be, in front. And when we're talking about dealing with social injustice, it's the most important to get it in front of the people that don't agree with us, and try to figure out a way to say, like, look at this, hold a mirror up and go, look at this. Really look at it and process it and see if you think this is right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, with that in mind, what's next?
For me?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I don't know what's next for me in my career. Unfortunately, as regularly happens, I don't have anything lined up for when Bandstand closes in September. So we'll see what happens. I'm optimistic. But we all go through that mourning stage of mourning our gainful employment that is leaving us.
Sure. Sure. So Bandstand is definitely closing.
It's closing on September 17th.
Also, listeners, ladies and gentlemen, you need to make sure you get your tickets, get to the theater to see that incredible show before
come check us out
before it leaves the board. Brandon, how can our audiences follow you? We want to know what you're up to. We want to come and support. We're fans now. So how do we keep up with Brandon Ellis?
I would say follow me on Instagram or Twitter, and there's a website that's coming soon, and I'll announce it on both of those mediums. So my Instagram is @MacheteThunderpants. You can't forget that. And my Twitter is Brandon Ellis 5.
Okay. Man, this has been a treat. I always try to ask before we sign off, the one thing that you are passionate about the people knowing about you, or the one thing that you want to share passionately before we sign off. What is that one thing, Brandon? One thing that you're passionate about, or that you passionately need the people to grab hold of?
I think that kindness is an undervalued trait, and that we should spend a lot more time thinking about how we can be kind to each other and the people that we meet in our life.
Absolutely. That's a great way to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Brandon Ellis, for joining us today on Broadway Offstage Right. This is awesome.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can also follow us on YouTube, on Spreaker. You can follow us on Instagram. We're Broadway Offstage Right. You clicked on the link, so hold that link there, because every Monday at 6 o'clock p.m., we will come to you with a new, exciting, and intriguing Broadway artist who will share their heart with you. So follow us, stay close. Until next time, thank you for meeting me off stage right. Good night, folks.
Good night.
God of justice, everything you need. The seas, God of the rivers and the streams, the earth, the sky, moon and the stars. All things great are small. He's God, He's God. Nobody like Him. His name is God. He's the Alpha Omega, the beginning and the end. He's search the world over, you won't find one. Nobody like Him. His name is God. He is God. Nobody but God.
Yes, he is.